The influence of ancient mythologies is deeply rooted in contemporary culture, reflected in various forms of artistic, literary, and religious expression. When we come across works of art, films, or even music, we often find references to gods and heroes who have been part of stories that have spanned centuries. This is no coincidence. The narratives that these myths offer us speak volumes about the human condition, our fears, desires, and aspirations. Personally, I have always been fascinated by how these myths continue to resonate in our daily lives. For example, when I read a novel that explores the struggle between good and evil, I cannot help but draw parallels with the stories of ancient gods who faced similar challenges. Thus, even though mythology may seem distant, it remains alive, influencing the way we think and act. The lessons we can learn from these myths are timeless and often extremely relevant. They offer us not only entertainment, but also a space to reflect on issues that still plague us. Furthermore, many of the festivals and celebrations we practice today have roots in ancient rituals. For example, the celebration of Christmas, which many associate solely with Christianity, has elements that intertwine with pagan winter festivals, celebrating renewal and the resurrection of light. This illustrates how traditions intertwine and how mythology continues to shape our beliefs and practices, albeit in subtle ways. The continuity of mythology reminds us that no matter how much time passes, the fundamental issues of life, such as love, loss, struggle, and hope, remain constant. The stories our ancestors told still have much to teach us. When we look to mythological narratives, we can see not only a glimpse into the past, but also a light that guides us on our current path. Through art, literature, and religion, these stories are interwoven, forming a rich and vibrant fabric that connects generations. It is as if we are all part of a grand narrative in which each of us plays a role. Thus, the continuity of mythology is not just an academic curiosity. It is an invitation to introspection and connection with something greater than ourselves. Therefore, when we reflect on the influence of mythologies on our lives, we can realize that they are not just relics of the past, but rather guides that help us navigate the challenges of the present. The richness of these stories shows us that, as society evolves, the lessons we learned from the gods and heroes of antiquity continue to resonate, offering wisdom and insight to those willing to listen. The continuity of mythology is, therefore, a celebration of the human experience, a reminder that we are never alone in our struggles and triumphs. When we think about the divine figures that populate ancient mythologies, it is fascinating to realize that they are not just characters from distant stories, but archetypes that reflect fundamental aspects of the human experience. These archetypes, such as the hero, the mother, the sage, and the trickster, are rooted in our emotions, behaviors, and values. Throughout history, they have shaped the way we understand ourselves and relate to each other. These divine figures represent, in a sense, the various layers of the human psyche. Each god or goddess carries with them a symbolic charge that resonates with our daily experiences. For example, the Greek god Zeus can be seen as a representation of patriarchal authority and power, while the goddess Athena symbolizes wisdom and strategy. These representations are not merely academic. They manifest in our lives in very real ways. When we face challenges, we can see ourselves as heroes on our own journey, seeking the courage of Achilles or the cunning of Odysseus. When I look at my own life, I realize how these influences are present in my choices and challenges. Often, we encounter situations that remind us of mythological figures. For example, when I face an ethical dilemma, it is as if the goddess of justice, Themis, is watching me, urging me to act with integrity. This type of reflection is common and helps us understand not only ourselves, but also those around us. Furthermore, mythological archetypes hold up a mirror to society. They help us understand cultural norms, values, and the roles we play. When we look at the stories of gods and goddesses, we realize that over the centuries, questions of love, power, and morality have remained constant. What has changed are the contexts in which these stories are told. The narratives of love and betrayal that we find in ancient myths echo in the songs, films, and books we consume today. Finally, It is important to remember that archetypes are not tactical. They evolve as society changes. In modern times, we see some mythical figures being reinterpreted to reflect contemporary issues such as gender and diversity. This adaptation is essential to the continued relevance of myths in our lives. When a new generation reimagines a hero or goddess, they are, in effect, reclaiming these archetypes for themselves, shaping them in light of their own experiences and challenges. Therefore, when we consider the presence of gods in our lives, it is essential to recognize that they are more than just stories from the past. They are part of us, shaping our identities and influencing our decisions. Through archetypes, we can find empathy, understanding, and a deeper connection with humanity. This journey of discovery invites us to explore not only who we are, but also who we can become. After all, when we look to ancient narratives, we are, in a sense, looking within ourselves. When we talk about the mysteries and rituals of ancient traditions, it is impossible not to feel drawn into this rich tapestry of beliefs and practices that have been passed down through the centuries. These rituals were not just a form of ceremony, but rather a profound search for connection with the divine. Through them, our ancestors sought to understand and relate to something that was beyond human comprehension, a yearning that many of us still carry. The mysteries, such as those practiced in cults such as those of Demeter or Isis, were marked by deep secrets and transformative experiences. Entering into one of these rituals meant more than just participating in a tradition. It was an inner journey, an opportunity to discover parts of oneself that often remain hidden. I wonder how often, in our daily lives, we neglect this search for experiences that truly transform us. What these rituals teach us is that spirituality often requires active effort, a willingness to delve into the unknown. These rituals were also a form of community. Collective participation in sacred practices created bonds between people, uniting them around a common goal: the search for understanding and transcendence. In a world that often seems to separate us, perhaps we should look to these ancient traditions as an invitation to come together around our own shared beliefs and experiences. It is not uncommon for us to seek connection with others in times of difficulty, and this connection, in turn, brings about a sense of belonging that is essential to well-being. Rituals also had a symbolic function. They were filled with meanings that, if explored, can help us better understand what we are seeking in our own lives. For example, cleansing before a ritual is not just a physical act. It is a powerful symbol of renewal and liberation. By releasing what weighs us down, we make room for new possibilities. Consider how we can apply this to our everyday lives. How often do we need to cleanse our minds and hearts of emotional burdens? Additionally, many rituals were performed at moments of transition, such as birth, maturity, or death. These milestones are universal and continue to be relevant. Today, even if many of us do not practice religious rituals, we all face moments of transition that challenge us to reflect on the meaning of our lives. Why not consider creating our own rituals? They can be as simple as lighting a candle in honor of a loved one or meditating in a quiet space. The important thing is that these moments connect us to something greater. The search for meaning through mysteries and rituals is a constant in the human experience. As we look back on the past, we are invited to reflect on what we can learn from these practices. They show us that spirituality does not have to be complicated. It can be an expression of love, connection, and self-discovery. By opening ourselves to these experiences, we may find a new path on our own spiritual journey. After all, what we seek is often already within us, waiting to be discovered. The modern reinterpretation of ancient stories and myths is a fascinating phenomenon that reveals how humanity continues to seek meaning in its narratives. When I look at the legends of gods and heroes who shaped civilizations, I realize that, despite their antiquity, they still speak deeply to our present. The truth is that the stories our ancestors told are not dead. They have been adapted, reinvented, and reinterpreted to fit our contemporary contexts. In literature, for example, many contemporary authors reimagine classic myths. A good example of this is the Percy Jackson series, which brings characters from Greek mythology into the modern world. This approach not only makes myths accessible to new generations, but also allows them to reflect on current dilemmas, such as the search for identity and belonging. Young readers see themselves in the adventures of Percy, who, despite being the son of a god, faces everyday problems, such as school and friendships. This connection is powerful, as it shows that even after millennia of distance, human issues remain the same. In addition to literature, cinema also plays a crucial role in reinterpreting myths. Films such as Thor and The Avengers bring gods and mythological beings to the big screen, introducing them to an audience that may not be familiar with these stories. The way these characters are portrayed often reflects modern issues, such as the struggle for power, responsibility, and sacrifice. As such, these films are not just entertainment. They offer a new lens through which we can examine our own lives and challenges. Reinterpretation is not limited to art forms, but also permeates contemporary spirituality. Many modern spiritual traditions incorporate elements of ancient mythology, adapting rituals and symbols to meet the needs of people today. For example, meditation and self-care practices are rooted in traditions that draw on myths and deities, providing a connection to something greater. This reminds us that the search for meaning and transcendence is a constant in the human experience. Interestingly, this reinterpretation also provokes a critical reflection on how we approach narratives of the past. By reinterpreting myths, we are invited to question the lessons they teach us. Some stories that were once considered absolute are now seen in a new light, challenging norms and values that may no longer apply to our world. This critical approach is essential, as it allows us to grow and evolve as individuals and as a society. I personally feel that reinterpreting ancient myths offers us an opportunity to engage in dialogue with our own stories. By revisiting these narratives, we can find truths that resonate with our own experiences. Connecting with the gods and heroes of old provides us with a mirror into our own lives, allowing us to explore our struggles, triumphs, and search for a greater purpose. In short, the modern reinterpretation of myths is not just a form of entertainment or an aesthetic pursuit. It is a profound journey that invites us to revisit our roots, question our beliefs, and, above all, find meaning in an ever-changing world. This search for connection, both with the past and the present, is an essential part of the human experience and helps us understand that the gods, in some way, continue to live among us. Furthermore, the presence of gods in contemporary society is often discussed in contexts of morality and ethics. Divine figures, who in ancient times were worshipped and feared, today serve as reference points for debates about what is right and wrong. When we speak of justice, compassion, or love for our fellow man, we cannot ignore the lessons that ancient mythologies have left us. They have shaped not only spirituality, but also the way we relate to one another. It is interesting to note that, even in an increasingly secularized world, myths and stories of gods still resonate in our culture. They appear in films, books, and even in everyday conversations. The figure of the hero, for example, is an archetype that recurs in many narratives, symbolizing the struggle against adversity and the search for redemption. This leads us to reflect on how these ancient stories still find space in our lives, helping us to give meaning to our own journeys. As someone who values spirituality, I realize that the question of the existence of gods does not come down to a simple answer. It is not just about believing or not in divine beings, but rather about understanding that the search for meaning is a fundamental part of the human experience. Often, we find answers in the little things, in a sunset, in a gesture of kindness, or in a deep conversation with a friend. These moments can be seen as manifestations of the divine, reminding us that, in some way, the gods still live among us. On my journey, I have learned that spirituality does not have to be something distant or inaccessible. It can be found in everyday interactions, in the traditions we follow, and in the values we embrace. The presence of the gods may be subtle, but it is undeniable. This connection helps us understand that, regardless of our individual beliefs, we are all searching for a greater purpose, for answers to the questions that trouble us. Finally, the discussion about the existence of the gods invites us to look within ourselves and at the world around us. It is an invitation to reflection, searching, and discovery. Each of us has our own spiritual journey, but deep down we all share the same search for meaning and connection with something that transcends our everyday existence.